Let's bring John McMullen in. And, of course, the Eagles win last night, so we got a lot to discuss on the positive today. Also some injury updates from today's Doug Peterson presser. Johnny Mac, how are you?
Doing well, and I got to say right off the bat that I picked the Panthers, so there you go.
I picked the Panthers as well.
I picked the Panthers as well.
I also picked the Chargers a couple of weeks ago. Just to throw that out there.
Yeah, I love how some listeners think I run away from predictions, and they're on air, they're on the web. I mean, what am I running away from?
Not to mention, you do list your record on there as well.
Yeah, you do the best you can, but obviously, you know, the Eagles, this was, I think, a temperature-taking game in the fact that I said beforehand on the Countdown to Kickoff show that if they won this game, it really changed the expectations from maybe winning the NFC East with 10 wins versus being a significant Super Bowl contender. And that's the kind of games you have to win if you want to be the ladder.
We've been talking, right, John. Now, go ahead.
Right now, I mean, the Eagles are in the conversation with the best teams in the NFC. There's no question about it.
We've talked a lot the last couple of weeks about equity-building wins. How much equity was built last night?
A lot, because you're going on a short week where you don't get to prepare on the road against a good football team that's also 4-1. So as I wrote, you have many hurdles to begin with, and then you add Pete Morelli onto that in the 10 penalties versus 1, the discrepancy, the largest in NFL history from that standpoint, and they still won the football game. I mean, that says all you need to know. That's a difficult test, and the Eagles won it. So right now, look, hey, it's still early in the season. Obviously, things can go wrong. We know about this league, and injuries can change everything at the drop of a hat. And when you see Carson Wentz lowering his shoulder, I think that was the most concerning thing about that game is you still have a young quarterback who hasn't figured out, hey, you know, tone it down to live another day. So you have to have that in the back of your head. But you also can't legislate injuries, and you have to play this game as hard as you can so you can understand it from his standpoint as well. But I've been saying it all along. This is a pretty good formula. The Eagles have a top 5 defensive line, a top 5 offensive line, and they got a quarterback who's going to be a superstar. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, we'll get into the quarterback. We'll get into the bigger picture. First, let's take a look at some of the updates from today. Jordan Hicks left last night with the ankle. There wasn't a lot reported about it during the game. I don't think they mentioned it at all on the broadcast last night. But Jordan Hicks, how's he feeling? What's the story with him?
Well, Doug spoke today, and he didn't seem very concerned. Remember, obviously, the Eagles playing on Thursday night, so now they have the extra time, and their next game isn't until Monday night, October 23rd, so they have 11 days, and Doug said he expects Jordan back for practice on Wednesday, so at least in a limited fashion, so that's good news, and we'll see how it shakes out. There's still time, but the best case is even if it ends up being a week or two, it's not a serious injury, and that's obviously very important for the Eagles, even though Nigel Bradham and Michael Kendricks, who kind of filled Jordan's role in the second half there, were both pretty spectacular.
Yeah, Nigel Bradham played an unbelievable game, John. I kept tweeting his name out, and then Michael Kendricks at the top of the tackle list. How do they use Kendricks now? Because he did get more time when Hicks went out, and what do they do to get more mix of Kendricks in when Hicks comes back? How do they get enough snaps for all three of those guys?
Well, I don't think there's much you can do when Jordan is healthy. I mean, the reality is you're in nickel most of the time, and that limits Michael's snaps. But it's nice to have that depth. What happens when Jordan has left, and last night Joe Walker played middle linebacker defense. When they went to the nickel, Nigel Bradham moved over to Jordan's spot, the guy who kind of calls the signals and is responsible for getting everybody lined up. And then Kendricks slips into the role as the nickel linebacker that Nigel usually occupies when Jordan is out there. So a lot of moving parts, but it worked well. And you got to give a lot of credit to both Bradham, who I think played his best game as an Eagle, and he's been very good as an Eagle, and Kendricks, who's been having a bounce-back year, because in the limited opportunities he's been out there, he's been very, very effective, and he had more opportunities, and he stayed effective.
How much do you attribute Kendrick's performance and his ability so far? He was a guy that sort of was unhappy and came out and said he was unhappy about his role and his playing time, and yet he's responded. Is that a guy trying to find a job somewhere else, or is that a guy that has swallowed his pride and said, I'll play in whatever role you tell me to be in?
Yeah, I don't think it's either. We talked to Michael about that, about him asking for a trade and the Eagles saying, you're a good football player, we don't want to do that. And he's obviously upset because when those guys are healthy, he only plays about 25% of the time. And so he expressed the frustration of that, but he also, kind of took a step back and said, hey, life could be a lot worse. I get paid a lot of money to play football. He likes his teammates. He likes being around them. And he just kind of took that positive outlook to it and said, hey, things could be a heck of a lot worse than what they are. And I'm just going to take advantage of the opportunities I do have. And ultimately, if he plays well, whether it's here or somewhere else, he's going to get an opportunity to be a starting linebacker again. And he kind of knows that as long as he does his part. And to this point, he's certainly doing his part.
What did Fletcher Cox add to the defense, John? They won 2 weeks without him, but what does he add that's essential if they want to make a deep playoff run?
Oh, well, I mean, that's their best player, arguably, on the entire team. He's a game wrecker, and you saw it when he pushed Trey Turner, who's one of the best of the Panthers offensive linemen, right into Cam Newton's lap, tipped the football, and he had the easy interception that sets up one of the Eagles' touchdowns. I mean, there aren't a lot of guys who can do that. I think you kind of set apart Aaron Donald, who's so ridiculously good. I don't want to put him in the conversation, but other than him, Fletcher's in the conversation for being the best interior defensive lineman in football. So I think the most impressive part when he was out is that the Eagles were able to persevere without him, and guys stepped up and at least played competent football. But when he's not out there, you don't have a play like that, because there's just not everybody in this league can push an offensive guard like that right back into the quarterback's lap.
Yeah, Mike and I do studs and duds. He was on both of our stud lists. I got 2 questions for you here. Any update on Darby? And then number 2, what did you think of the secondary last night? Robinson, Douglas, even Mills, which he kind of got in my dud list, but I had to pick somebody, even though he had some penalties. So he made some plays, though. What did you think of the secondary? Any update on Darby?
Well, I thought the secondary was pretty good. I think they've held up pretty well without Darby for the most part. It's not spectacular, but, if you look at the names out there, it's been greater than the sum of its parts. I think except for the pass interference penalties, and both of them were questionable, I think Jalen probably had his best game this season. In coverage, I thought he played very well. Patrick Robinson has been lights out. That continued. He had 2 big plays, the one on special teams when he made up for the Kenyon Varner flub, which could have been a disastrous play, obviously deep in the Eagles' territory. And then he's Johnny on the spot when they drop the screen pass and he intercepts the ball deep in Panthers territory. That sets up another Eagles touchdown. He's been tremendous. And Rasul, he struggled, as most rookies do, but the Eagles have found a pretty nice formula by letting Robinson and Mills start in the base defense and then move Patrick inside and bring Rasul on when they play nickel. So that gives Robinson more snaps. And they've done well. And it looks like it's going to have to last a little bit longer because Ronald Darby, Doug kind of said he's probably not going to be ready next week, and which is Monday night, remember, so 11 days. And when they first talked about the timetable of that injury was 4 to 6 weeks. Well, 6 weeks would be October 23rd against the Redskins, and it doesn't look like he's going to be back on the field. But I always thought that was very optimistic just because of the nature of the position, a dislocated ankle, and the fact that the best trait Ronald Darby has is his speed. And coming off a dislocated ankle and expecting the guy to run 4 threes in 6 weeks, that seems a little optimistic to me.
All right, John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. He's got his 10 observations on the Eagles' win right now at 97.3 ESPN.com. One of them is, the third down. They're the best third down team in football. Is that Carson Wentz? Is that a combination of things? Doug Peterson's play calling, more weapons? They were dreadful on third down last year.
Yeah, I asked Frank Reich about that last week, and he said it's a combination of everything. But let's be honest, it starts with Carson Wentz. It really does. His ability to extend plays, and that's something you can't teach. That's something you either have the ability to do it or you don't, and he's one of those guys, and there aren't a lot of them. Cam's one of them. Aaron Rodgers is obviously probably the best, maybe ever at doing it. But at this stage of his career, 22 starts, Carson Wentz is phenomenal at his ability to keep play and sort of go into sandlot football mode and find somebody when a play breaks down. So unscripted offense is something a lot of teams don't have in their toolbox, and it sets apart the really good teams. And the Eagles are on the path to having that and being one of the top teams to be able to do it.
Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN. John McMullen with us. How about Big V last night, John? How do you think he held up on the right side? Because Julius Peppers, that play early, and I know you asked Doug about that today.
Yeah, that was a disaster, and kind of saw it develop in that way. And I said to be concerned with it because, when you come in the middle of the game, as he did against the Cardinals at halftime, obviously there's no chance to game plan for you. The Panthers knew Lane Johnson wasn't going to be there, and they obviously game planned for it. It started with the Peppers play, but they overloaded that side time after time after time. And early in the game, Carson was taking some significant hits. To Vitai's credit, though, he settled down. He played much better in the second half. It still wasn't great, but it was a lot better than it was in the past. And it's not Lane Johnson, and he's going to be back against the Redskins, and the Eagles are going to be thrilled by that. But it's another example of persevering with whether it's Bo Allen for Fletcher Cox, whether it's the running back committee for Darren Sproles, whether it's Rasul Douglas for Ronald Darby. The Eagles have been able to persevere in these types of situations, and it happened again yesterday.
They kept asking last night on the broadcast, Romo kept bringing it up. He kept saying, and they don't even have Darby yet. Do you think that, it's asking, does he make a significant difference when he comes back? Like, does he take them to another level, or are they playing at a level right now where that when he comes back, it won't be that noticeable? You know what I'm saying? Like, does he add that much when he comes back to this deep? You know what I'm saying?
I think you could add a C to that A and B, and the fact that they might get worse, at least early on, because, again, he's not going to be, remember, he's going to have missed significant time, and he's probably going to have rust. So you could see a little step backward, at least first. To me, the most interesting part is the Eagles like Jalen Mills so much But Patrick Robinson has played at such a high level. What do you do when Darby comes back? Who's the other starter? I think it's going to be Mills. But how do you not play Patrick Robinson at the level he's playing at? How do you take him off the football field? So in a weird way, at least in the short term, in the long term, there's no question. It's advantage Eagles because Darby's their best corner. And eventually when he gets completely healthy, completely comfortable, he's going to make the Eagles a better team. But it's sort of like riding the hot hand. Like maybe when a bench player comes in an NBA game and scores 20, you really want to take him off the floor. And that's kind of what you have with Patrick Robinson. Why do you want to take him off the field?
Yeah. They got a tough choice to make when a tough decision to reconfigure this defense when he comes back. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. John McMullen, he writes at 97.3ESPN.com. Inside the numbers, Carson over Cam. Is this for one night, or you taking a bigger picture look here?
No, that was for one night. I mean, hey, people can say what they want about Cam. I heard you guys talking about his body language. He's always had that issue. People have criticized him for it. But the amount they put on his shoulders, had to put on his shoulders last night, the fact that the running backs combined for 1 yard on 13 carries, to talk about the Eagles' front, that's 3 inches a carry, by the way, mathematically. That's what they did in the running game. So Cam had to throw it, I think, 52 times. He was phenomenal running the ball. I don't care what anybody says about that dive at the pylon. That's a touchdown. He's a phenomenal player. But the Panthers obviously have some issues running the football, traditionally, not with him. And I think if you look at the end of that game when the Panthers had the football in the 3rd and 1 and the 4th and 1, typically in that type of situation, they just use a design run to Cam to get the first down. And he was so spent, they couldn't go to that play. And the game ends with the 2 incompletions. So, Cam's still a really good player, but Carson is on his way, and he's going to reach a level where the Cleveland Browns front office might want to just think about getting out of this industry.
All right. Plenty more on this Eagles game from John at 97.3ESPN.com.
And an outstanding article on FanRag Sports about Pete Morelli and the NFL Pete Morelli problem.
Yes, he also wrote his national column on the Carolina Panthers side of things, so check that out at JF McMullen. But, John, I want to get your take on what you know and where this Ezekiel Elliott thing is going. Are we anticipating that he will not play? They have a bye this week, but do we anticipate that he will not play until the Sunday before Thanksgiving?
Yeah, it's most likely he's not going to play at least the week coming out of the bye because the NFL is going to put the suspension and implement it. He's got 15 days to do something from a legal standpoint. He could appeal where the NFL set things in motion, which is in New York versus Texas. So there's still some legal wrangling to go. It's always been about strategy. It's been about when do you want to serve the suspension? And with the Cowboys at 2-3, and it's pretty evident they're not a legitimate Super Bowl contender, I could see him tapping out as well and saying, hey, I'm 22, let's get this over with, 6 games, and let's start going in the right direction. Because even if you get another stay, another injunction, and put it off, you're ultimately going to serve the suspension, maybe at the start of the 2018 season. And who knows, maybe the Cowboys are in a better position, and they won't have him for the first 6 games there. So I think from their standpoint, they would probably like him to say, you know what, let's just do it. Let's get it over with. But we'll see how it shakes out. He's got 2 weeks to decide.
John, news coming out today that the 49ers have released linebacker Navarro Bowman. We know how well Kendricks and Bradham played last night, but is Navarro Bowman worth kicking the tires if you're the Philadelphia Eagles?
No, the Eagles are tremendously happy with their linebacker rotation, especially after last night, as I mentioned, the fact that, remember, only 2 guys play significant snaps. So when you look at it, and I think people kind of think about traditional linebacking sort of depth charts and say, well, we only have 3 linebackers. Well, really, you only play 2, so you have a really good backup. And then the Eagles like Joe Walker, who played a little bit, as I said, base. Najee Good's a good special teams player. Guy like Navarro Bowman's had so many injury issues. Really not a fit on this team, and they don't need him at this point. I mean, this team's 5-1. They're not looking to make change.
It should be interesting, though, to see if other teams make calls here, because Bowman just released in the week 6 of an NFL season here. He's been with them since about 2010. He could probably help a contending type of team. How about like Houston, who lost Merciless? They could be looking for a linebacker to try to help them out.
Yeah, he'll have no problem finding a job. He's still a competent NFL player. So that won't be an issue for him. And obviously San Francisco, he's probably in some ways thrilled to be out of a rebuilding situation. And he almost has to land in a better situation from a competitive standpoint. But the Eagles, as I said, if you look at Jordan Hicks, and who actually has not played up to his traditional level. Nigel Bradham, though, is playing better than he ever has, and so is Michael Kendricks. They're very well stocked at that position.
Sports Bash Live. Check out John, of course, on Twitter at JF McMullen, and his Eagles coverage at 973ESPN.com, and check out his national column at FanRag Sports NFL. The Eagles 11 days away from that matchup with the Redskins on Monday night, and of course you can hear the countdown to kickoff right here Monday night, starting at 6 o'clock. As the Eagles on Monday Night Football in their next matchup. John and Joe will have the countdown to kickoff on Monday Night Football. Thanks, John.
Hey, thank you, guys.